Why do men find it hard to understand women? Have you ever been in this situation? She suddenly goes silent. You ask, "Are you okay?" She says, "Fine." But the next week, there is no more familiar smile, no more text messages asking how she is doing. There is only a cold silence that covers the whole house. What did you do wrong? Is she too sensitive? Or simply, have you never really understood women? Carl Jung, the world-famous psychoanalyst, once said a sentence that shocked many people. Women are not meant to be understood, but to be felt. That seemingly mysterious sentence, in fact, is the key to explaining one of the biggest differences between the two sexes. Men often want things to be clear. If you are sad, say why. If you are angry, say it directly. If there is something unsatisfactory, give specific feedback. But women do not operate like a mechanical system. They are a multi-layered emotional world where not everything can be named in words. You can buy her an expensive gift, take her on a long trip, but forget to hold her hand when she is tired. And it is that lack of feeling that makes her leave, even though everything is fine on the outside. Jung believes that every man has an ideal image of a woman, called Anima. This image is built from childhood memories, from mother, from first loves, from movies, from books, and then he enters a relationship with a real woman, with the expectation that she must be like that model. But real life is not a dream. The woman he loves will have messy days, times of anger for no reason, times of silence for no apparent reason. She is not perfect, but she is a real person, full of emotions and hurt. The contradiction arises. When the ideal image collides with reality, the man feels disappointed, confused, helpless, and begins to judge. Women are complicated. Women are contradictory. But at that moment, the man needs to understand, she is not a problem to be solved. She is a soul that needs to be listened to. Try not to ask, "What's wrong with you?" But instead, "I'm here if you need me." Try to sit next to her, even if you don't say anything. Sometimes a hug will replace 100 explanations. Women don't need to be completely understood. They just need to be truly felt, to see that you don't panic when they are sad, to believe that you will stay even when they are not okay. And to do that, men need one important thing: connect with their own emotions. Carl Jung said, "A man cannot love a woman completely if he has not reconciled with the feminine part of his soul." So if you are in love with a woman, do not try to explain every tear she sheds. Learn to be there, learn to be patient, and learn to feel with your heart, not just with your mind. Because sometimes what she needs is just your presence at the right time, in the right place, and quiet enough. We often think of women as emotional creatures and men as rational. But in fact, according to Carl Jung, each person has both sides, the rational side and the emotional side, the masculine side and the feminine side. The difference is how we connect with each part. For men, accessing emotions is a more difficult journey. They are taught from a young age to be strong, to control themselves, not to cry, not to be weak. And from there, they learn to cut themselves off from their emotional side, which is the anima that Jung mentioned. That means that when faced with a woman who lives by emotions, who expresses emotions outwardly, men feel strange. Instead of listening and empathizing, they often react by fixing the problem. But emotions are not something that needs to be fixed. They just need to be present, to be shared. That's why women often say, "I don't need you to solve it, I just need you to listen." But men feel awkward when they can't do anything. They think if they can't fix it, it means they're useless. This unintentionally makes women feel that they're not understood. In a relationship, there are times when she tells a very small story. A colleague's inconsiderate behavior, a friend forgot her birthday, or simply a tiring day for no reason. What she needs is presence, a sincere look, a handshake, a shoulder to lean on. But if a man hastily says, "Stop thinking about it," or "then quit your job," he is unintentionally denying her feelings. Carl Jung emphasized that if a man doesn't know how to connect with his anima, the feminine part inside him, he will have difficulty understanding women. Because then, he sees the woman not as an independent person, but as a mirror reflecting his own shortcomings, either idolizing her too much or devaluing, criticizing, denying the value of emotions. So instead of asking, "Why is she difficult to understand?" a man needs to ask himself, "Have I ever accepted my emotions? Do I dare to express my sadness, my hurt, my disappointment, or am I still hiding it behind a shell of reason and control? A man can be strong and still gentle. He can be assertive and still know how to listen. True maturity is not about suppressing emotions, but understanding them and knowing how to share them in a healthy way. Jung once compared the relationship between a man and a woman to two rivers, each flowing in a different direction, but can meet at a bend. And that turning point is where both sides step out of their comfort zone to learn how to see, understand, and empathize with the other person. The difference between men and women is not a problem. It only becomes a problem when both sides try to make the other person the most understandable version of themselves. But true love is not born from understanding everything, but from accepting and accompanying. When a man knows how to stop to listen, not to argue, not to fix, but simply to be present, then he is connecting with the anima within himself. And that helps him no longer see women as unpredictable mysteries, but as souls waiting to be sympathized. Gender conflict does not come from differences, but from the lack of connection between the two parts of each person. A man can only truly understand women when he understands himself. That's when the relationship becomes sustainable, not because you understand her completely, but because you know how to be fully present with her whenever she needs you. And that's also the first step to moving from conflict to empathy. Carl Jung did more than describe the differences between the sexes. He also developed a profound theory that explains why these differences lead to conflict, and more importantly, how to reconcile that conflict. That is the theory of Anima and Animus. According to Jung, every person, whether male or female, carries within them a polar opposite. Men carry within them the anima, the feminine archetype, while women carry within them the animus, the masculine archetype. The anima is not just softness, sensitivity, or romance. It is intuition, empathy, and emotional depth. The animus is not just logic, decisiveness, and action. It is also clarity of thought and the ability to protect. When a man is not familiar with his anima, he is often ruled by reason, detached from emotion. He may be successful, strong, good at planning, but has difficulty in love when faced with tears or emotional silence from a woman. Similarly, a woman who is not in touch with her animus is easily carried away by emotions, lacks boundaries, is vulnerable, and does not know how to protect herself in a relationship. This imbalance turns the relationship into a codependent one, where one partner only gives, the other only receives. But mature love requires inner equality, where both partners are in touch with their polar opposites. A man who used to be afraid of tears now learns to sit with his sadness without running away. He is no longer afraid to say, "I'm tired, I feel sorry for myself," or "I don't know what to do." And this honesty makes him closer to the woman next to him. The woman, instead of reacting emotionally when hurt, begins to learn to use reason to set boundaries, to say no when necessary, to love without losing herself. She becomes stronger, but not in a cold, harsh way, but in a wise and self-aware way. Carl Jung believed that when a person begins an inner journey, learning about the anima or animus within themselves, they truly mature spiritually. And when two people who have grown up like this meet, their relationship is no longer about dependence or salvation, but about conscious encounter. How to connect with the anima or animus within. The first is observation. When do you overreact? When do you feel helpless, out of control, or detached from yourself? These are the moments that are signals from the forgotten part of you. The second is dialogue. Journaling, meditating, or talking to a trusted friend, all are ways to bring that inner self to light. Ask yourself, what am I feeling? What am I trying to avoid? How many times has this happened? Third, practice. If you are a man and are used to living rationally, practice being comfortable with ambiguity. Practice listening to your body. Practice being patient when the woman next to you is upset for no apparent reason. If you are a woman and are often ruled by emotions, try setting boundaries. Try to be more decisive in making decisions. Try to live more independently every day. This journey is not easy, but it is the only way you will truly understand others, because you have begun to understand yourself. Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will control your life, and you will call it fate. When you make friends with your anima or animus, you not only understand yourself better, but you also open a new door to enter the world of others, without fear or hurt. And perhaps the most beautiful thing is, you no longer love because you lack, but because you have enough. If you are expecting a simple guide to understanding women, you will be disappointed. For according to Carl Jung, women are not a problem that can be solved with a formula. They are a flow of emotions, continuous, changing, and alive like nature. You cannot control a river, but you can learn to swim in it, learn to listen to its murmur, and recognize its own rhythm. Understanding women does not begin with the question, why is she like this? But with the acceptance that her soul is a space that does not need to be fixed, does not need to be explained, just to be present with. Carl Jung emphasized that a man can only truly connect with a woman when he dares to face his anima. That is the emotional part that he has been taught to suppress, the moments of weakness that he was ashamed of, the times when he wanted to cry but did not dare, wanted to love but was afraid of being judged. A man thinks he is strong when he suppresses his emotions, but in reality, true strength comes from daring to acknowledge those emotions without being controlled by them. That is when he dares to say, I am sad, I feel hurt, I need to be heard. When a man is in touch with his true emotions, he becomes gentler with the woman beside him. He no longer finds her too complicated when she cries in the middle of dinner. He no longer feels annoyed when she needs to be held for no reason. He understands that emotions do not need to be rational to be real. Inner transformation is a journey that begins with acceptance. Accept that we are fragile, accept that we need others, and from there, learn how to listen to a woman, not to fix her, but to accompany her through each emotional wave. Practice listening to her with your eyes instead of just your ears. Practice looking at what she is not saying rather than focusing on what she is saying. Sometimes, a silent handshake is more powerful than 100 empty promises. Carl Jung once wrote, "Don't just ask what the other person is thinking. Ask what feelings are rising in them that have not been expressed." Women don't need you to rescue them. They just need to know that if they miss a beat, you won't leave. They need to see that you are calm enough to be a place to rest, but also deep enough to not be swept away by their inner storms. So where can you start? Allow yourself to be vulnerable. No one can love someone who is only strong and tough, because then they won't know where to lean when they are weak. Practice listening, not to argue or correct. Just listen, so that the other person knows that they have a safe space to be themselves. Don't try to guess a woman's mood with your mind. Feel it with your heart. If you find her cold, she may be hurt. If you find her angry, she may be afraid of something. And above all, see the relationship not as a place to win, but as a place to understand. It doesn't matter who is right, just who is willing to take a step back to enter the other's world. A mature man is not someone who understands women completely. It's someone who is aware enough to know when to be silent, when to listen, and when to say, I don't understand, but I am here. Carl Jung once said, "We are not enlightened by imagining light, but by making darkness conscious." So, if you are in love, don't look for answers. Learn to be present, feel, and grow together in that wordless journey. Because when you stop to understand your feelings, you are also opening the first door to truly understanding a woman. A man once asked Carl how to keep a woman, and he replied, "Don't keep her. Keep her safe enough to let her stay." The answer seems simple, but it is the crystallization of a profound philosophy. Love is not about keeping, but about creating a space where the other person can be themselves without being judged, without being controlled. In a world where so many people try to be loved by being pleasing, pure presence, without imposing, without demanding, becomes the most precious gift. Carl Jung never taught us how to possess others. He taught us how to understand so that we can build a relationship based on awareness, not emotional reaction. A man does not need to understand everything about the woman beside him. He just needs to be alert enough to see her, even when she is confused, cold, or insecure. He doesn't need to block her emotional storm. Just be strong enough to stand by her, not to be swept away, nor to run away. True love, therefore, is not about doing the right thing, but about being there at the right time. A woman can forgive 100 mistakes, but it will be very difficult to forgive if she feels lonely in the relationship she is in. So if you are a man and you are in love, try to look back. Are you really listening, or are you just waiting for your turn to speak? Are you trying to fix her feelings, or are you practicing accepting them as part of life? Do you dare to be vulnerable, to feel things that cannot be put into words? Because women sometimes do not speak with words. They speak with silence, with their eyes, with the way they look away, or with a touch as light as the sky. If you only listen to what she says, you will miss what is truly important, because what is important is often hidden in the silence. Practice being present in those silences. Sit next to her when she doesn't want to say anything. Look into her eyes when she avoids your gaze. And learn to believe that you don't need to do anything except stay. Carl Jung once said, "When a person is no longer afraid of his own darkness, he will not be afraid of the darkness of others." When you dare to face your fears, your wounds, and the unhealed parts of yourself, you will also be at peace enough to embrace the scratches from the person you love. Love does not begin with understanding each other, but with wanting to understand. No one really understands the other person, but everyone can learn to listen, day after day, with their heart. You can read as many books as you want. Listen to as many philosophies as you want. But in the end, without patience and presence, you will get lost in the emotional world of women. And on the contrary, if you are patient enough, tolerant enough, you will see that women are not as difficult to understand as you think. They just need you to stop and stay there long enough. Because love sometimes is not about promises. It is about the moment you stay when everything else in her wants to leave. That is when you don't need to keep a woman because she has chosen to stay. And that is when you understand what Jung meant, not through reason, but with all your heart.